Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your MC, Chloe James.
Another shout out to Rudy G. How awesome is he? I'm dancing backstage. Woo! Loving it. Thanks for having with me. Excited for a really great afternoon. I can see it filling up there. We've got a few very exciting things to get through, and there are some very exciting people backstage. So, kicking off this afternoon, crypto, AI, tokenization. If I had a Bitcoin for every time I had heard one of those words in the last year, then that's pretty cool. Welcome to the afternoon. We're going to dive right into it. I'm personally really excited about this next session, which promises to move beyond the hype and get real about crypto. As 2017's crypto bull market captured the world's attention and sparked an investment gold rush, behind the scenes, many, especially all of us, were already thinking about the underlying blockchain technology and how it could drive a new way of innovation and utility. Coinbase was one of those early pioneers. Up next, two of the industry power players, Asif Hirji, President and CEO of Coinbase, and Katie Haun, Coinbase board member and co-lead of the crypto fund at Andreessen. They are here to help shape the vision of crypto's next phase, from powering the decentralized applications and Internet 3.0 to providing infrastructure for emerging economies. Leading this chat is senior writer at Fortune and co-founding editor of Fortune's The Ledger, Robert Hackett. Katie Haun is a general practitioner, prior to which she spent a decade as a federal prosecutor with the US Department of Justice. Wow, with a focus on fraud, cybersecurity, and corporate crime. She created the government's first cryptocurrency task force and led the investigation into Mt. Gox hack and the corrupt agents on the Silk Road task force. She is on the board of Coinbase and knows a lot about it. Asif Hirji is the president and CEO of Coinbase, running the day-to-day business and focusing on scaling the current business and launching new ones. A big job. Prior to Coinbase, he was a private equity and venture capital investor and advisor. So it is time to get real about crypto. Please join me in welcoming Robert, Katie, and Asif.
Thanks for joining us. It's a pleasure to be here. As you know, the theme of this conference is the money revolution, and it is a pleasure to be joined by two of the insurgents leading that coup, Katie and Asif. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I want to kick things off and jump right into it and ask you, Katie, what is wrong with this? For anybody who can't see it, we have a dollar bill, US fiat currency.
So I would start out by there's nothing wrong with that, Robert, but the point is it really depends where you find yourself in the world. For you, there might be nothing wrong with a dollar because you presumably have a bank account and identity documents. But the fact is there are 2 billion people today in this world who lack, first of all, bank accounts. They also lack identity. But what they have smartphones. And so what they can't use, really, are dollars, or if they can use dollars, they can't get dollars when they need them. They don't have a place to put them. And so crypto unleashes this totally new potential.
So Asif, I want to ask you a similar question. What makes cryptocurrency and blockchains any better than what we've got already? Better than the traditional financial system?
So it's not that there's anything wrong with the paper dollar you just held up, but it's the system that's around it that's the problem. So for you to send that to me, unless we're sitting across from each other and you just hand it to me, it's going to cost you somewhere between 1% and 3%, right? For something very simple. That should be almost free, right? And for you to actually earn interest on it, or for you to actually deposit it in a safe place, the friction that we put in our system and the way we've built that system makes it super expensive. And there's a reason why there's so many people who are unbanked and can't get access to financial services. That's why we at Coinbase set out on a mission to create an open financial system, because we think we can do that with very low cost and increase access for folks through crypto. And then it's not that there's anything wrong with the dollar per se, it's just that the system around it makes it very hard. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Sorry.
So I was just going to say, that's the promise, right? So that's why crypto, I think, is so exciting. By the way, I just want to ask a question. How many people in the audience actually have invested or own crypto today? Hands up. Yeah, it's a significant number. How many of you are Coinbase customers? Thank you very much. Appreciate that. For those of you who are not into crypto, I would look, just go try some, even a little bit. You can invest in crypto for as little as $1, and you really need to experience it. And what I would tell you to your question, look, I'm a software engineer, so I'll give you a software engineering answer. We're on the cusp of Internet 3, right? We went from mainframe computing to distributed computing, created lots of value with amazing companies. Went from then distributed computing to cloud mobile, another wave of innovation, another wave of great companies being created. We're now creating a decentralized web, Internet 3. And there are going to be amazing companies coming up, and they're going to solve two of the biggest problems of the Internet of today, which is the Internet of today is hampered by the fact that we didn't build money into it from the beginning. Mark Andreessen, who we both know very well, will tell you that they had all these debates about turning on that protocol, and they didn't. And the second is they take privacy seriously enough, which is why we have the Internet of today, which is you and I and everybody else, we use these services for free. They mine all the data from us, and they turn us into the product, and they sell us to advertisers. Right? That's the Internet model of today. But it doesn't have to be that way. In the Internet of the future, Internet 3, we will own the data. And we will decide as individuals what data to expose and why and under what circumstances. That's a very different proposition than we currently have. It's a better place, frankly, for individual privacy.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of work to get there, and we can talk about that. I think one thing to remember is we are in the dial-up days of crypto, and some of the critics out there really confuse the current state with the end state. And if you can just imagine back in the days that, when we were using those dial-up days, using modem to connect, and you would go home, and you would have your evening, and you would literally go online. It was a behavior. You would dial up and go online. Quite different from today, where everyone is connected all the time, or online all of the time if you have a smartphone. But if I would have told you in those early days that you would be streaming videos on demand, and that you would be having a device in your pocket you could order groceries from, you could book an apartment anywhere, you could communicate with friends and family for free, or you could transfer value, you would have rightfully told me, you're crazy, I can't even get off a single email because my modem connection won't stay stable long enough. And I think that's a really important analog because we are in such early days, and really a lot of the architecture, the infrastructure, just hasn't been built yet. And one of the things I do in my role at Andreessen Horowitz is we're seeing projects and companies that are poised to build this infrastructure and architecture. I would also say, Robert, you pulled up the dollar. If you wanted to send that dollar, as Asif mentioned, there are a lot of fees that come associated with that. So World Bank today estimates that fees for international remittances are 7.5%. But that's in a good country pair. If you talk about going to 2 sub-Saharan African countries, for example, and you want to send $1, 70 cents will go to the person you're sending it to, 30 cents will go to middlemen. And so this is a $600 billion a year market for international remittances. And consumers of that $600 billion are paying $30 billion a year. And most of the consumers are people who can afford at least. They're people sending money home. So that's also what's wrong with our current system. It's not the dollar per se, but it's the system, as Asif said, that surrounds it.
When I joined you in Mexico City, I saw you debate Paul Krugman, the Nobel Prize-winning economist and New York Times op-ed writer. This was a salient feature of your argument, and actually Mexico is one of the biggest markets for remittances.
That's right.
Between the U.S. and Mexico, and that really hit home for that audience.
Yeah. $24 billion is the world's largest payment corridor between the United States and Mexico.
But you mentioned, so since joining Andreessen Horowitz, you joined with their first female general partner, and you mentioned that it's the dial-up days, but that there's a lot of excitement going on, a lot of new technologies. What are you seeing? What are some of those exciting technologies or projects that are crossing your desk?
Well, I'll say 3 briefly, and then I want to ask Asif, because I think there's some big news today coming out of Coinbase, which ties right in. The first thing I'm seeing are stable coins. I think 2019, and obviously 2018 is going to be the year of the stable coin.
Do we know what stable coins are? It's a coin, cryptocurrency that's pegged to a certain price.
So one of the knocks on cryptocurrency is why would I use it for anything? Because it's totally volatile, it's all over the place. And this defeats the purpose of it being able to be used for payments, because why would I want to pay for a cup of coffee with a currency that might be worth so much more, so much less a week or a month later? Similarly, why would I do any number of financial transactions with cryptocurrency? Why would I make a bet? Why would I lend money using crypto? I mean, I'd be making 2 bets. 1, that the money I got paid back would be worth the same, and 2, that person would pay me. So we think one of the really pieces of really important architecture and infrastructure in the crypto space are what are stable coins. And that is a currency, a cryptocurrency, that is pegged or tethered somehow to another asset, take the dollar. That's one of the most common forms of cryptocurrency. And once you have a stable currency that has all the benefits of crypto, it's trackable and traceable on the blockchain, it can be seamlessly transferred, and so we think stable coins are really key to unlocking all of the potential that Asif mentioned earlier about Web 3.0 and transferring value. If you can get something that's stable, and we've been seeing some of these projects. Coinbase had a big announcement announcing today a stable coin. We'll let Asif speak about that.
This is a perfect segue. This USD coin and why it's important. Why it's
Yeah, so we announced today that we and another player named Circle have formed a consortium of high-quality crypto companies, and we're issuing stable coins backed one for one with the US dollar, completely audited, completely transparent. We think this is a key step to unlocking innovation in crypto. And the analogy I would use is, we used to operate in a cash economy, right? And then we went to banks, and we used to deposit the money into banks, and then finally banks came out with things like ATMs, and they electronified cash. And so we could do deposits, and we could do withdrawals, and I could get my payroll done, and I could get cash out of an ATM, and it increased the utility. This is the next phase. Imagine now your dollar is programmable, right? This is the thing that we've lacked, is a programmable, stable currency. And now if it's programmable, I can write it into contracts. I can write it into all sorts of things, prediction markets or whatever else. I can use it for purchases and payments. I can send it remittances. You could literally send the USD coin that we launched today for virtually free anywhere in the world, right? So go back to that $60 billion that's being eroded away in remittances. That goes to near zero. It costs as much as sending an email to send money now internationally, and that's just one small use case of what we think a stable coin can do.
As exciting as cryptocurrency has been over the past year, we haven't seen a real use case materialize for it other than speculative betting and investing. When are we going to see that killer app? When are we going to have that iPhone moment?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So look, that is a knock that I think all of us in crypto have to take seriously, which is there's great promise in crypto. And frankly, I would say that when Bitcoin arrived, right, it had solved one of the hardest problems in computer science, and it did it in such an elegant way that most of us were too stupid to figure out that it was a general purpose protocol for building an app. It took us a year or two to figure that out. And so then along comes Ethereum, which is basically a development platform for cryptocurrency. It's like the Java or .NET of crypto. And now others have come along. We have those two main use cases, right? We have store of value and build other apps. We have not yet had the breakthrough app that has created utility. I would say that as we thought about it, fintech before crypto, and specifically a stable coin, is like mobile before the iPhone came along. Now that we've got programmable, real, stable currency, you will see the innovation take off in crypto. That's my personal belief, and that's why Coinbase has done this. And it'll unlock the ability to create programmatic money applications like we've not seen before. Because now money truly is programmable. That's the difference, and I think that's going to be the iPhone moment for the industry.
Yeah, I could also add to that. I mean, there are some applications that we've seen coming out. One of them sounds kind of silly, CryptoKitties. I don't know how many of the audience have heard of CryptoKitties.
Does anybody own a CryptoKitty in the audience?
Do you own
I have random cats on the Ethereum blockchain. I see someone back there.
All right. The point of this, though, is not about CryptoKitties. It's about the idea of what we call NFTs, or non-fungible tokens, and these are really digital goods. And what crypto gives is, for the first time, you can own a digital good that's provably scarce. This is a really big breakthrough. And one of the areas that's a big breakthrough is, forget CryptoKitties, take gaming. Gaming right now is a $123 billion industry in the world, which is really remarkable. By far the biggest entertainment category in the world right now. And think about those people who play video games. What do? They spend money on these platforms. They buy, Fortnite was making $300 million a month in revenue, selling these goods that can only be used in the Fortnite program, and they can't be transferred. And Fortnite should, God forbid, ever go out of business. Some parents, I guess, might be happy about that. But if they ever go out of business, people who have invested in these digital goods, we'll just lose them. And so what non-fungible tokens give you for the first time, or crypto goods, you can call them digital goods, crypto goods, is the potential to actually own a digital good that's scarce, that you could transfer across platforms. And this might sound kind of crazy, but if you think about it, so much of our identities, and the millennial generation as well, so much of our identities are moving online. It's not crazy to think that you might want to own a good that exists in a virtual world. And if you do, you're going to want to control it. You would want to have the power to move it to a different platform. You would want to have the power to sell it, perhaps. So I think that could be a killer app. The problem is we're not there yet because platform or protocols like Ethereum right now is having a hard time scaling. When CryptoKitties had its reached a fever pitch last year, it was taking up, I believe, 90% of the Ethereum network. So it's just not scalable. The example I like to give is, take this room. Imagine we were back in a university classroom and everyone in this room had to take an exam, right? Like old school, like blue book style, writing out your exam. And then imagine that we had a set of 10 different proctors in this room. And those 10 proctors had to grade every single exam. And we couldn't reach finality, we couldn't have our grades until every one of those proctors had graded every one of the exams. We'd be here for a really long time. The same thing is right now happening on some of these smart contract protocols or networks like Ethereum. They're not able yet, and I emphasize the word yet, to scale and to support the great demand for these platforms. But I think that architecture is coming because you have proposals like Ethereum 2.0, sharding, and you have proposals like Plasma and other things, and also different protocols, threshold relays, Affinity Network, that have a lot of promise for being able to scale. So then, now take back our example where we're all doing these exams, you would just subdivide this room and have a proctor grade each set of exams. Now all of a sudden it becomes much more efficient and it's much more scalable. So I think those things need to happen before you can really have killer apps that go viral.
Asif, so I was interviewing your head of security the other day on another stage of this conference, and he said that his least favorite question to be asked is, what coins is Coinbase going to add next? So naturally, I have to ask you which coins are going next.
Yeah, so I can't answer that question directly, but that's material non-public information. What I will tell you is, I think one of the risks we run in the US is we are falling behind in regulation. So we Coinbase took a very US-centric view historically. We would list coins that we thought were appropriate in the United States with complying with the regulations, and we would then enable them for the rest of the world. And what's happened is the US is not tech-based. The rest of the world has more constructive crypto regulations. And we're at risk of having the protocols and the standards defined for us as opposed to being part of the definition process. So we, Coinbase, are now taking a global view, which is we are looking at all the cryptos that we think are worth listing. We're looking at the geographies in which we can list them, and we are as rapidly as we can listing them in those geographies. You should expect us to add many more assets over the next probably year or so. There are, I don't know, somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 cryptocurrencies out there. Even if 90% of them are garbage, there's at least 200 to 300 that are worth investing in. And right now, we can offer you 7, right? Which is ridiculous. We're going to close that gap globally and in the US as much as we can over the next year.
And I think the important thing that you just mentioned, Asif, is not that you don't want regulation. What's harming companies in the US is a lack of regulatory clarity.
That's right.
So I think that's a really important point because a lot of people in the crypto sphere think that, or I'm sorry, a lot of outside people think that they don't, people in the crypto industry don't want regulation, and I think what they don't want is continued uncertainty.
You are formerly of the government, you were a federal prosecutor. What advice would you have for regulators now who are approaching crypto?
For regulators who are approaching crypto? I mean, one thing is, first of all, I would be experimenting with it and making sure you understand it, because the last thing you want is regulation to outpace understanding. But I think one of the things that the government has done well historically and needs to continue to do is really be acting as almost a liaison, meeting and doing a lot of industry outreach and understanding how this works and what kind of challenges these businesses are facing. I mean, we've seen that very effectively done in countries like Singapore and in the UK and other jurisdictions. One of the advantages those countries have is they have the sandbox approach, right? Where you can actually apply if you're a fintech company. You can actually apply for almost I don't want to call it a free pass, but that's essentially what it is for 2 years. How would you
No, that's
describe
right.
it?
I think they promote financial services innovation more strongly in those markets because they give you a sandbox to operate in, and that makes it a protected sandbox. We don't do that here.
Right, we don't have that. And you know, one of the reasons for that is we have so many different federal agencies in this country. We don't have one. If you look at Singapore, they have one financial regulator, it's the Monetary Authority of Singapore. But so we also had a number of different states involved. I think there are some promising things that are happening in this regulatory environment in the U.S., one of which is the OCC FinTech Charter, so that you don't have to go around to 50 different states and get 50 different answers. But I think really the government has its work cut out for it, and regulators have their work cut out for them, even to just keep pace with understanding what's going on. I hear all the time from some of my former colleagues, gosh, just when we figured out Bitcoin in 2015, along comes Ethereum, and now, of course, those are just two of many. And it's not just the different cryptocurrencies, the 1,600 different cryptocurrencies. Of course, it's all of these new protocols and technologies. And I think the government struggles to figure out, you know, what are decentralized applications? How should they be regulated? What about decentralized exchanges? So I think my advice would be continuous outreach, continuous working with companies who really, like Coinbase, want to foster responsible innovation, want to innovate, but also need some clarity to run their business.
I think that there has to be recognition. This is not about financial services necessarily. We're in the investment phase of crypto, but crypto is the next wave of the internet, and it's going to affect every industry, and it's going to affect every asset class. And so I would posit that all the best companies of the future in the next decade or so are going to be blockchain-based in some way, shape, or form. In the same way that they were cloud mobile-based 10 years ago, in the same way that they were distributed computing-based 10 years before that. I think the second thing is, for the first time, we are now going to exchange trade with a whole set of asset classes that currently we do not exchange trade. And it's going to increase liquidity. Things like real estate, private partnerships, artworks, fractionalization is going to happen, and you're going to exchange trade and tokenize all of those assets. And that is a fundamental shift in the way we manage capital markets, right? It's going to increase the end of what is exchange traded. It's going to increase the end of who can exchange trade things. And if our regulators don't get that, we are going to be left behind. Now, this is a bad analogy, but the analogy we use is it's a bit like 5G. It's going to happen. The question isn't, is it going to happen or not? It's going to happen. The question is, do we stay at the forefront and shape the regulation, or do we have the rest of the world do that for us and then have to adopt that protocol? And I think it's very dangerous for us to take a passive view on that.
And I think also one of the things regulators need to keep in mind is all crypto is not created equally, right? You had this when you saw in the early days of the internet, you had people saying it was really just used for fraud or scams. I mean, I hear the same kind of myths said about crypto, and the truth is there are scams undoubtedly, and there are also a lot of great promising technologies that I think we're all going to be using. I mean, 84% of businesses in this country now are experimenting and have blockchain research groups going, and that's really compelling, I think.
But we'll be keeping out an eye for those projects that are not scams and frauds, and we'll be paying close attention to them. Thank you all so much for joining.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.